Welcome to Rock DIY or Do It You. If you do it, then it's all you. This is an overview of the Ryobi 2000 PSI 1.2 gallon per minute electric pressure washer. As you can see on the front panel, you have the on and off switch, and then directly at the bottom is the soap dispenser that locks onto the front. On the side here, you can see where the hose attaches your water source, and then also the tube that goes into the soap box. And then here on the back side is where your wand hose attaches. This spool for winding up your wand hose. It also has this handle for winding it up, and the handle does lock up. And then on the back side is the holder for the electrical cord. Kind of nice that you can wind it around, and then when you want to take it off quickly, just rotate this down and it comes off pretty easily. This is the actual wand holder. It's kind of flimsy. I could see it breaking off pretty easily. You also have the different nozzles that conveniently lock into the top of this bar here under the handle. You got your turbo nozzle, and then one of them's not on here because it's on the wand right now. But if you look at the very top of the panel, you can see what each nozzle is specifically used for. This is the power cord with the reset and test button on it. Whenever I do use the pressure washer, I always make sure this portion of it is always elevated up off the ground, especially if you're getting everything wet. If you need to move this pressure washer while it's in use, the wand hose, the actual garden hose for the water source, and the electrical cord makes it very awkward to move. You only have to move it a short distance, not that big of a deal. This is what it typically looks like when you do have to move the pressure washer. You could wind everything back up onto the spool and the holders, but this is typically what I have to do. Pick up and hold everything, and then grab the handle to move it where I want it. Where the water hose hooks up, I do like the fact that they have this extended out rather than set back. It makes it a whole lot easier getting a garden hose on here. And the other thing I like is that it's got this rotating collar to put on the hose. The only thing I don't like is because it is mounted on the side of the pressure washer. If you have to move it, I can see that it's going to put a lot of strain on this piece, and it already starts off pretty loose, but I could just see it breaking off at some point. The soap tank locks on with these little holes right here to these bolts on two sides. Every time I move it, this tank ends up falling off, and I end up dragging it by the hose. It's not very practical. If you do need to store the pressure washer, the nice thing with the handle is that it has where you can pull it out by pushing on these detents here to remove it, and then that's how you would lock it back in place. I don't like the wand hose spool at all, especially if it's somewhat cold outside. The hose does not want to wind around the spool, and it's just very impractical and clumsy the way that it sits on the spool. The height of the handle for moving the pressure washer around isn't too bad of a height if you just need to move it a very short distance with all the hoses and power cord attached to it. But I think it would be easier to move about if the handle was a little bit taller. I don't think it's going to change how clumsy it feels to move this thing with everything attached to it. I put the nozzles back in place just so they can be seen in the holder. The blue nozzle is a basically low pressure nozzle that you can use with soap, and then you have the orange one that's for high pressure. It's a 15-degree pressure tip, and then the black one is the turbo nozzle, which is well, both the turbo nozzle and the orange one are both abrasive type tips. The other thing I don't like about the spool is if you do get the wand hose wrapped around it, the actual spool does not lock into place, so it actually will unspool on its own, make a mess, and then you don't have any way to keep it locked in place. This is how the wand or lance sits in the holder. One of the things you'll see on the trigger is there's this red piece that you pull up, and basically it just prevents it from being used or moved. And I'm sure it's a safety precaution, especially if you have children playing around and accidentally use it. The wand hose attaches here and is actually pretty easy to put on and remove because it's got this very threaded piece that makes it easy to turn. As far as where this piece attaches, it does not actually separate very easily. You would think it would be easy, but you pretty much have to carry a tool that fits this portion so that you can turn this portion. Putting on the different nozzles is pretty easy. You just pull back on this collar, place the nozzle in, and then push it back. I'm going to put the pressure washer into operation. I've already hooked up the water hose. Now I just need to put a nozzle on the wand and then plug it into power. And then before turning the power on, I'm going to make sure that water is running through the wand. When you do use these nozzles, make sure they're completely seated and the quick disconnect slides all the way forward, because these will shoot off in quite a ways if they're not seated properly. This is like one of those moments when you have a car that has a constant noise, and as soon as you take it into a dealership to have it looked at, they can't find anything wrong with it. So it's kind of the same thing with this pressure washer. It's kind of hit and miss as far as whether it's going to operate the way that it's supposed to or not. I have everything ready to go. I've got the nozzle on the wand hose is hooked up, and I have the power applied. So now, before turning the power actually on, I'm going to pull the trigger on the wand to get water to run through it. So it is actually running. You can hear the pressure building up. And this is just a soft wash nozzle. This is the high pressure 15-degree nozzle. So this is typically what happens. I had just taken the other nozzle off and put the high pressure nozzle on, and when I pull the trigger, this is what I get, and the pressure washer pump is not turning on. Now I have the power in the off position. I'm going to let it sit for about 5 minutes to see if anything changes. I let it sit for about 5 minutes and reapplied the power, and you can hear it actually running. So let's see what high pressure looks like coming out of it. Another issue that I have with this pressure washer is if you are using it and you stop using it for a little bit but plan to continue to use it, it typically does not have any pressure when you go to use it again. So I'm going to let it sit for about 5 minutes and actually see whether it has pressure or not. I wanted to show that after letting the pressure washer sit for a little while, that when you go back to continue to operate it, that it doesn't typically want to operate, and then you have to go through the same steps again in order to get it to function. But in this case, it continued to function after letting it sit. Be careful submerging the nozzles of the pressure washer, especially the high pressure ones, because I had submerged the turbo nozzle into a pipe that I was clearing out, and it busted the turbo nozzle, and that's the reason why I don't actually demonstrate the use of the turbo nozzle during this video. The turbo nozzle split down the side of it, so it doesn't function as it's supposed to. The good thing is that it was still under warranty, and Ryobi agreed to replace it. Thanks for watching my video. I truly appreciate it. Hopefully the video was useful in your plans for a future DIY project. Please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks again.